Hey there, good evening. It's Matt, and this is a brief review of the relatively new Netflix show, Monster, the Ed Gein story. It's on Netflix, and it's kind of in keeping with the Halloween season. It's Halloween this very week. I've watched all 8 episodes of the show over the past week and a half. My mom and I watched Alien Earth not that long ago, which I thought was pretty effective on Disney Plus. This is a horror story which is way more gruesome because of its ostensible connection to reality than, say, a space fantasy kind of show, i.e., with Alien. I am in my mother's basement. This is where I'm staying lately, as I'm in between contractual employment opportunities. And as such, this is a show I wouldn't necessarily share or watch with probably anybody else. Probably. I recommended it based off of just the first trailer to my older teenage kid because he is into some what I would consider fairly serious TV. He's been watching Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and the like. They have Netflix, my son and his mom and my other son. But I have to tell you, the show is pretty hard to watch in some cases. It's really well done. It's really very excellently acted. Charlie Hunnam, I think I'm saying that right, from Sons of Anarchy. Those of you who watch that show, he does a complete transformation from the skeevy biker kind of dude from that series into the butcher of Plainfield, Wisconsin. He fully inhabits the character and he brings sensitivity and humanity to the character. It's clear that Hunnam really has a lot of empathy for the character he's portraying. So that's all good. The show has outstanding production values being run. The showrunner is Ryan Murphy, the main producer. I think he also directed and possibly wrote some of the episodes. It's a lot of narrative which is grafted onto the historical events of what happened with Ed Gein, a very seriously mentally unwell murderer and grave robber from Plainfield, Wisconsin, from mid to late 1950s. And it's a narrative that's been picked up by the likes of Alfred Hitchcock with the famous Psycho film, and then later on subsequent sequels, and as well by Tobe Hooper, who used the Gein case as part of the narrative for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was even picked up again with the Silence of the Lambs novel and with the film. So it's been pretty widely mythologized, and the show is aware of the mythology of this character and really leans into it. If you look at the events that are described just on the historical record, the Wikipedia or your preferred informative news source on the internet or informational kind of site, you're going to find that there's a pretty significant discrepancy between the events that are depicted in the series and what has been referred to within the historical accounts, right? The contemporaneous events. And what I can see there is the show is kind of delving into the disturbed psyche of Gain by having a very porous sense of historical narrative versus the interior life of this very disturbed character. And a lot of the sequences in the film are taking events which are pure speculation or were proven at the time to be historically inaccurate. Um, there's a lot that is kind of taken from speculation and it's been put into the service of the story. And the show really does a lot to try and humanize the character of Gain, but it also doesn't necessarily treat Gain as a human. It's pretty stylized, it's heavily stylized. There's entire sequences which delve into his fascination with Nazi epics, I guess, Nazi imagery, Nazi events, which took place through the comic medium, right? So when I say epic, it's the story which is being depicted in the film is a commentary on stories. It's a commentary on our fascination with horrific events and how that plays out across our collective psyche through the mediums of comics and film and novels. And it takes on um, a kind of social commentary, but it also is pretty sensationalistic in its presentation of the events. The border between historical fact and stylized narrative is just blurred significantly. And as such, it tends to participate in the culture that I think it has aspirations to critique. At least that's how I would tend to look at it. That's how I do look at it. Some of the sequences of violence are really hard to watch. Um, I'm somebody who I'm not a horror aficionado by any stretch, but I do appreciate well crafted story, and through this show is a well crafted story. But I would be concerned that people who are watching this casually may be looking at it in terms of historical accuracy. And if you just fact check some of the events, the names, the personalities, I mean, there's just entire characters. There's a lot going on where it's clear that they just sort of put it together to make it more compelling to watch. And they tend to then, in so doing, sensationalize things maybe more than they need to. And to me, that seems exploitive, I suppose, a bit. But if you're watching the show in the first place, then probably you are looking for some thrills. You are looking for some investigation into the darker aspects of the human psyche where the shadows are cast and it's hard to differentiate between what is or could have been objectively true with what is, I guess, emotionally truthful. And the events, the characters depicted are all kind of buried in the mists of time, as it were. And so there's not really any agency for those individuals, although there is kind of an attempt in the final act, the final episode, to um, humanize, again, that word, humanize the character, which is pretty, for all that he has done, that's objectively part of the record, it's something where he has no agency as part of this narrative. It's there for our entertainment, right? And in terms of TV, it's very compelling. And to that end, I'd recommend it, but I would be careful about showing it around kids. I'd be careful around showing it with anybody who isn't a pretty serious fan of dark narratives, right? But again, this is something where if you're going to watch it in the first place and you watch a trailer of it at all, you'd probably be going into it fairly informed. I was surprised at some of the stuff that they showed, and maybe I'm meant to. Maybe pushing the envelope is itself a commentary on contemporary standards. Anyway, that's my brief, relatively brief commentary on Monster, the Ed Gein story. Thanks for checking out this Substack. Bye for now.